Gina, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm totally petrified.
It's okay.
This way. Thank you. You're fine. You're good. You're better than I am.
No. Not even close.
All right. This is the short story I wrote for my master's level creative writing class. So it's called My Last Day on Earth. My name is Douglas Ward. I'm writing this so that whoever finds us, if anyone finds us, they know what happened to the Ward family. The tremors began again. They were slow-rolling tremors. It was like boating on a slow-moving river. No one else stirred except the dogs. They came to the bedside, nuzzling my hands and face and whining softly, looking for comfort. I wasn't sure I could give it to them. And looking back now, I'm glad I did not give them comfort or quell their fears. These long period quakes had me worried too. They meant that magma was moving rapidly under the bedrock. I wanted to see the mountain to check and look for smoke, but it was too dark to see right now. I quietly got out of bed, took care of my twin Great Danes, and went to my computer. Later, after my third or fourth cup of coffee, I lost count some time ago, I went outside to run the dogs for a while. They needed to let off some nervous energy, and so did I. In fact, I was so anxious that I was surprised that I was not rooted to one spot with fear, like I am right now. In a super rational and anxiety-ridden moment, I had rented the last U-Haul truck left in town. As another larger tremor and a thick plume of smoke on the mountain ended the already tense and robotic games with the dogs, my wife Abby came to the back door. With her hair still tousled from sleep, she looked worried, scared even. "Doug, what's going on?" she asked with a trembling voice. "Why is there dust all over everything?" I whistled for the dogs to join me on the deck. While they loped across the yard, I went to Abby and attempted to console her and prepare her for the devastating truth at the same time. Things are all right for now. The mountain is waking up, so to speak, and you are seeing and smelling tephra from the cone. The cloud is actually dust and ash. We all went quietly back into the house. Josiah, my son, was just coming down the hall, his hair erect but dressed for the day. His 12-year-old voice cracked as he said, "It's going to blow, isn't it, Dad?" Abby shot me a warning glance as I turned to face my son directly. We as a family are going to prepare as though it is, and soon. I don't like the frequency of these earthquakes. "What should we do first?" asked Josiah. He had such an adult, serious face that I could not help smiling as I said, "Eat breakfast. We can't do anything properly on an empty stomach." Josiah was quick to catch on to my morbid sense of humor, and he flashed me a smile over his shoulder on his way to the kitchen. "Good plan, Dad, good plan. I'm starving," he called from the pantry. Abby grabbed me by the upper arm, pulling me into the den. "How can you just act like nothing is wrong? How can you joke with the boy and make him think everything will be okay?" she whispered harshly. I responded by saying something like, "What do you expect me to do? Act like a chicken with its head cut off and run around in a panic? That would accomplish nothing. But more importantly, it would make it nearly impossible for us to get the cooperation we are going to need from Josiah and the two dogs, Anubis and Horus. We need to be attentive, concerned, but calm through the whole process. Now let's go get some breakfast before the boy begins to worry." After breakfast, I sent Abby and Josiah to pack 1 week's worth of clothes for each of us, any valuables or any small thing we could sell for food or cash later. I made the necessary phone calls to my doctor, insurance men, the bank, etc. After the light packing was done, we all plowed into the vehicle and went to pick up the moving van. When we got back to the house, I had Abby and Josiah pack the car with their clothes and valuables that were packed earlier. While they were doing that, I went through the house listing what furniture we could not part with. I knew we were taking the heirloom hutch and the wedding china it held. We would probably take the good dining room set and the 2-bedroom sets, that would be it. The ground shook again. This time it was much more violent, and I could hear the earth moving. Hopefully it was up on the mountain and not in town. The dogs began to bark incessantly, and I raced to calm them back down. The last thing I wanted in my car was 400 pounds of really scared, excited dog. My wife and son came in from the car coughing, holding their shirts over their faces, and they were covered with dust and ash. With excitement and fear in his eyes, my son told me about the earthquake. "It was awesome, Dad. The ground rumbled up on the mountain, so I looked up. There was a big hump of rock near the top that was sticking out real far. Then there was a crack and a big rumble, and the big hump fell in on itself and disappeared. Now there's a big hole in the side of the mountain where the rocks used to be, and the mountain began to pump out clouds of dust and ash. I knew then that we had mere hours until the main eruption. We might only have minutes, really, but I didn't want to think about it. With measured and semi-controlled terror in my heart, I set my family to work moving things out into the truck. We had to wrap scarves and bandanas over our mouths, noses and mouths. Finally, the tremors came so close together that I decided it was time to leave. I jumped into the truck with Anubis and Horace, while Abby and Josiah jumped into the car. Me and Abby had already put the walkie-talkies in the vehicle, so when we pulled out, we double-checked that we both knew the right route to take. We decided to go west. Most people were taking the road to the south, and the roads were congested, and traffic was moving too slow for my liking. When I finally got through the southbound traffic, I turned onto the westbound on-ramp. Abby and I were pleasantly surprised to find the road not only lightly traveled, but also relatively undamaged by the earthquakes. I kept checking the mountain in my rear view as I drove. The ash cloud was getting bigger by the second. I knew our escape was going to be close. I got on the radio and told Abby to speed it up. We were going 80 miles per hour, but I knew that would be nothing if the volcano blew now. Our luck held out for another 15 minutes. I heard the roar as the pyroclastic flow began its descent down the mountain. Josiah was instantly on the radio asking me what was happening and wanting to know how the dogs were. I told him the dogs were fine. I also told him that the main eruption had started and that we might not be far enough away, so things might get scary. I could see the wave rushing down the mountain behind us. All I could do was tell Abby and Josiah that I loved them and to keep driving. Maybe we were out of range. Then I heard it. It was louder than 3 freight trains speeding up behind me. The pyroclastic flow was so high that I could not see the top in my mirror. I told Abby and Josiah that I loved them for what I thought was the last time and prepared for the collision. It was not what I expected. The debris hit the truck and the car, and we moved with it for a few hundred yards. Then to my horror, we stopped, and the top of the flow rolled right over us. We were encased in mud and volcanic rock at least 20 feet deep. The next sound I heard is Abby saying, "Doug, Doug." I immediately answered her and let her know I was fine. Josiah was fine. How could I tell them? We were in tune. We were going to die right here when we ran out of air. I asked Abby if we had any allergy medicine close at hand. She found some in her purse. My plan was to put Josiah down to sleep before he began to struggle for air. It has been 12 hours since we were buried alive. Josiah is asleep. Abby gave him the allergy pills at the 9-hour mark. Hopefully he sleeps through the end. The batteries in the walkies are low, so me and Abby barely talk to each other anymore. The dogs are somewhat oblivious to the threat, though they sense the change in my mood. It is getting harder to write. I have double visions and dizzy spells that make it difficult. It's 13 hours. I said goodbye to Abby, but she didn't answer back. I've lost her. I've lost my son. The dogs are sleeping and will soon expire. I can tell by their breathing. End of transcript. Edward Miller, transcriptionist.